Hello, my name is Melinda Calway, and I am going to paint some Black-Eyed Susans today. Now, I'm going to mix up my paints. I've sprayed them already, so they're starting to reconstitute a bit, and I'm going to mix up, I'm going to start off with some yellow, and this is Hansa Yellow Deep, which is a really beautiful, deep, rich yellow. So I'm going to mix up some of that, put it in my palette, get it ready. And this is some raw sienna, which is kind of a bit of a dull color. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of quinacridone burnt orange. That brightens it up a little bit. Always good to have a little piece of paper to test your colors on. Okay. So that's some color, and I'm going to put a little aureole in it. Aureole is a much cooler yellow than the Hansa Yellow Deep. Get those started. And this is a little bit of quinacridone gold. Throw a little bit in there. Looks very similar to the quinacridone burnt orange on the palette. Okay, I'm going to start now. I'm going to use a number 4 brush to get started with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet the petal a little bit first. I've got it drawn out. I'm not sure if you can see it drawn, but it's drawn out on my paper. I'm using Arches 140 pound cold press. It's one of my favorite papers. It is my favorite paper. This particular flower is behind the other one, so I'm going to do that first. Not so much because it's behind, but more because it is to the left of the paper, so I won't bring my hand through it as I'm doing it. So I'm wetting the petals first, and then I'm going to drop the color in. I like to let the water do the work for me whenever possible. So my brush had a little bit of yellow on it already, and that is just to help me see where I put the water exactly. So the interesting thing about watercolor is the paint will only go where it's wet, as I put it in now. Okay, I'm going to start off with some of this cooler aureole and yellow. Let it do its thing here. Okay, that's kind of my background or base yellow. Now I'm going to play. I'm going to start off with some of the richer Hansa yellow. Now this is mixed a little bit thicker. So the first one was probably the consistency of skim milk. This one's more like 2%, maybe even homogenized. So a little thicker. As it's thicker, it'll stay a little bit better, but it still spreads. I like this color. It's nice and vibrant. Putting it a little thicker in spots. I've got a little piece of fuzz on my paper. Whenever you do that, use your brush to take it off with, not your fingers. If you use your fingers, you will scratch the paper and it will be forever a dark spot where you may not want it. Now with watercolor, we know that as it dries, it always becomes a little bit lighter. So I have to keep that in mind while I'm painting. To put it a little darker than I really anticipate it being. Now this particular piece of Arches has the logo of Arches embossed in the corner, and there's nothing wrong with having it on the paper because it just shows that you're using a very good quality paper, so not to worry about it. I usually try and put it at the bottom of the page when that happens rather than up in the sky or anything. Just a personal preference, but something to definitely think about as you're taping your paper and drawing it. I've got it taped around all four sides nice and evenly so that when I take the page off the background, it has a really nice border, nice white border all around. Looks really neat. Okay, I'm going to take some of this other darker color now and see. You know, I'm going to put it in here. Let's put some of this in here, just to start with. And let it bleed down just a little bit. Made it a little thicker. I took that right out of the palette, so it's a little richer. And let's see what it does. It's not really that dark yet, but I'm going to add a little bit of a brown color into it. And the brown that I'm going to use is burnt umber. So I like how that's spreading down a bit. Okay, put some burnt umber in here. Just kind of dotting it in so that you'll see some of the light and some of the dark. Kind of gets fuzzy up at the top, which I quite like. A little more of this dark in because I know when it dries it'll be a little bit lighter, and I want to have the contrast. I love contrast. Contrast is very powerful, and I want the contrast of the really dark in the light yellow. I want it to bleed down into the petals just a touch, as it's happening here like that. Okay, so as it's drying, I can see that it's getting much lighter. I'm going to put a little bit of darker in some parts of the petals. Still wet right now, so now's a good time to put it in if I want it to keep smooth and bleed nicely. There's a little spot there that the leaf bends, the petal, sorry, bends backwards. So I'm going to put that in later. And I'll put a few veins in later. I have a drop of water here that I'm just going to lift off. And I'm going to do this one first. Give that one a little chance to dry up. So the same sort of thing. This time I'm going to do a slightly different method. I'm not going to actually wet it first. I'm going to put my lightest color on first. Just end up being a little quicker. So my lightest color is the Aureolin Yellow, which is a very wonderful color in that it's non-staining and very transparent. And it's a primary color. So it's a color that I really like having in my palette. Because it's non-staining and transparent, it really mixes well with all the other colors. If you want to do glazes or just mix another color. Still sticking with my size 4 brush. I can get some nice small points, and I can push down and get a wider part of the brush if I'd like that. This petal has some parts of it that are starting to wither a little bit, so I can put a little bit of darker color in here, which will make it stand out nicely too. Going to my Hansa Yellow Deep first. These are great flowers to have in your garden. They like lots of sun and they're pretty hardy. They spread nicely and they come back every year. And they bloom from June to October. They stay in flower a long time. Now, because these ones are withering a little bit, it's drying my brush off there, I'm going to take some of this darker color and bring it in. If I keep my brush moving, I don't get so much blossom. See, if I lift my brush up, I get that blossom happening. But if I keep my brush moving, then that doesn't really happen. So I'm going to keep my brush moving because I really don't want any of that at the moment. Okay, so we're going to make this half of the flower wilting, and the other half is still doing okay. Now I'm going to put the dark in now, and then I'm going to let this dry up just a touch, and then I'm going to come back to it. Just reshape that petal a little bit, get into a nicer shape in this one too. Okay, so let's start off by putting this color in. I'm going to jump over here and throw some more color in here. Well, that is still a little bit wet. I'm actually going to throw a little bit of blue in there too. This is ultramarine blue. I think I put too much in. It was beginning to look too opaque, so I'm going to lift a little off, move it around, and I'll try and stay away from that one for a bit. Let's put that color in here. I know a lot of people have been asking me to do more of the instructional videos like this, so I will do that, and some people have been saying they really like the hyperlapse, so I'll try and do a few more of that since there's time right now. So stay tuned, and if you go to YouTube and just type Melinda Calway into the YouTube bar there, you should be able to find any videos that I've done. I'm going to try and post them on YouTube now that I figured out how. So feel free to check it out there for any of these instructional videos, or the hyperlapse ones will be also there. Take a little bit of this off here and put it here. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of darker color in there. So I'm going to use the quinacridone burnt orange. If you don't have quinacridone burnt orange, it's very similar to burnt sienna. The quinacridone color is a little bit more transparent and quite a bit more expensive. So. Looks pretty dark now, but I know it's going to dry a little bit lighter. So these are petals that have kind of seen their better days, and they're starting to fade away. I'm going to take a small rigger brush. This is a 0. And I'm going to take some of the darker color here, mix it up, and see if I can put a couple of veins down there. It might be a little too early, but let's see how it works. If I put the veins in while it's still wet, it will have very soft color. If I put it in when it's dry, it'll be very defined. So I'm going for soft at the moment because it is still wet. That got a little too dark. Just gonna put a drop of water on there, lighten it up a little. Throw some more yellow in there to disguise it. With watercolor, there's always little ways of fixing things. And the more mistakes you make, the more ways you learn of fixing things. And I know a lot of ways of fixing things. See, this one's turned into a bit of a blossom there because I had too much water on my brush. So if that's happened, a way to fix a blossom is just add more thick paint. So I'm just going to go right into the paint well there and throw a little bit of this hints of yellow in. And that also happened here. Okay. I want to try and always get a little bit more variation of value in the petals. So you have some light and some dark. Just makes it look a whole lot more interesting than having it all one color, one value. So I'm using this very fine point brush to give a nice shape to the petals. Now that they're getting nicely shaped, I'm going to go back and look at these and maybe put a few lines in here as well. Starting to dry up there a little bit so I can get some hard lines in, and I'm ready to put a few hard lines in. Using the raw sienna right now. Raw sienna is a little bit more opaque than the other colors that I've been using. Just a little line in there too. Okay, I can tell I just had way too much water on my brush. That's why I use this little sponge. It takes the extra water off your brush. I find it's just wonderful. But I put too much water. I didn't clean it up, dry my brush properly. So I'm going to add a little more paint to this area so I don't get blossoming. If you don't know what blossoming is, when you put too much water on the page and you get this kind of a burst of lighter color, and it looks a bit like a blossom. If you've never done that, then you haven't been doing the watercolor a lot, because it's one of those things that we try and avoid a little bit. In most cases, sometimes it looks really cool. It's good to know when you want it, when you don't. Okay, one more to go. Going back to my number 4 brush. And here we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to throw the color on first. I'm going to go a little bit faster now because I don't want to spend too long in this video. As far as the background goes, I think maybe we'll do a part 2 so that the video is not quite so long. So throwing on the aureole in yellow. You can see it's quite a different yellow from what's around it, which is a nice contrast, but I will add some more color on to it also. Okay, going back into that Hansa yellow. I'm really liking that Hansa yellow deep. It's a nice orangey yellow, very warm. Throwing some of that color into it. Painting this petal behind the other ones because it is behind that flower, and that way it gives you a little bit of depth. Any kind of overlap something, it gives you depth. These petals are getting a little lost in each other. Well, that happens a lot in nature. This is almost dry there, so I'm going to try and paint the center part. Starting off with a lighter color. Letting it bleed into the petals just a little bit. And it bleeds in because I'm moving fairly quickly and the petals are still wet when I'm putting this color on. If my petals had dried, that would not happen. Going really dark around this petals to show it, make it stand out. I'm going to switch to a bit of a smaller brush. So I can have a little bit more control. I'm putting my wrist down on the paper so that I can go very carefully around that petal. There's another piece of a petal there. My number 4 brush and get some darker color in this whole thing. I'm going to take my small rigger brush now and I'm going to just add a few little lines in here. A few more in here. Sometimes there's these little details that make it look really cool. Just reshaping some of the petals. going to throw some dark very quickly into the greenery. Some greens, mix up some greens. This is olive green, probably my favorite green because it's like a color from nature that's coming out of a tube. So I start off with a little bit of that, and I'm going to throw it in here. Again, I've got some water. I can see that's on the handle of the brush and the ferrule, the metal part, and that will eventually drip down and cause some uncontrollable things to happen that I don't want. So that's why I use that little sponge to dry off my brush whenever possible. So I'm going to start off with some green. I'm going to throw a little bit of brown in it too. Another stem here. If you're interested in watching the background, I will do a separate video for that. Throwing a little bit of the same similar colors into the leaves, it helps unite the whole picture if you use similar colors. So I've been using some of my olive green, using some of the brown, using some of the quinacridone burnt orange. Throw it into the leaves. I am trying to paint as fast as I can. I'm not usually a very fast painter, but for the video's sake and for your patience' sake, I'm trying to go a little bit quickly. So if you want to see more of my work, you can go to my website, which is melindacalway.ca, or my Instagram, which is melindacalway.artist, or Facebook, which is melindacalway-artist. So if you like my Facebook, then you'll see my monthly posts of paintings, and Instagram, I put on things whenever I can. Let's throw a little yellow in here. So for the petals, I want to put a little bit of a darker line in them. With this one here, it seems a little drier. And I'm using a perylene green right now. Perylene green is a beautiful dark green. If you don't have perylene green, you can mix one of your greens with some ultramarine, and it gives you a nice dark green. Okay, so thank you for watching, and if you like this, let me know. And while I have time, we'll do a little bit more so that you can paint along. You can pause it when you need to and continue on. Enjoy. Have a great day.